Hello guys, how are we doing and welcome back to the channel. Today I have another spawn guide and it is on 6 star, the new map replacing Skid Row Hardpoint in MW3 Ranked play. For me, I think it's a little bit of a better map, it's a little bit more even and some of the hills are a little bit more breakable than say P2 and P5 on Skid Row because that was a bit of a nightmare. For those of you new to the series, there's a playlist down below of every single Hardpoint map in MW3 Ranked play so you guys can learn the spawns and benefit, get wins more because you know the spawns and therefore you know where the enemies are coming from. And if this is your first spawn guide on the channel, I'm going to be going through what each of these little colours mean, all the rings and everything. Before we get into that, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of insight on how I got to this point, how I analyse the spawns, what my sources of information are to get to this point. Obviously, I've played 6 star only a handful of times, so it's not just from pure gameplay, although that has helped me a little bit. But most of my knowledge from this has come from just watching VODs after VODs after VODs. From the codcaster perspective, literally staring at the minimap, taking note of the spawn points, considering why they are, building a theory, and then watching the rest of the VODs with that theory and going, okay, yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's pretty much what's gone into it. Then a little caveat to this, it covers 95% of situations you're going to come across. Obviously, I can't watch an unlimited amount of VODs to get every single possible situation out there, but it will cover most occurrences that you will find when you jump into MW3 Ranked play. So this is good news. As long as you follow the logic in here, you're going to be covered for 19 out of 20 situations. So even more perhaps actually. So unless something really bizarre and situational happens, what you're going to see in the video should be the case. So yeah, if this is your first rodeo with the spawn guides, the rings are the spawn points itself. So the blue ring here, pink ring here, and all the other colors. The shaded areas, you can see where my cursor is here, they are where you can block that color spawn from. So say for example, this is the blue spawn. You can block the blue spawn by being in this blue shaded area. As well as being in the shaded areas, you can block the spawn by being in sight of the spawn or being in it yourself. So obviously, I'm not going to cover the map in colors if that's how I was going to do it. But I've shaded areas where you might not think you can block that spawn point from, but you actually can. But obviously bear in mind, if you're looking at a spawn point, it's going to block it. Or if you're in the spawn point and you just spawn there yourself, chances are it's going to block it. So let's get into it, starting with P1, obviously. So the main spawns are blue and pink. By the way, if you see me looking over to the left, it's because I've got notes. Obviously, I can't remember everything off the top of my head right now, but there are notes here, which I will have in a Google document that you can join the Discord down below, and it'll be in the Spawn Guide channel, and you can look at this and review it in your own time without having me waffling in your ears. But the main spawns are pink and blue. I'd say pink is a little bit better because it's closer to P2, and the hills, the spawns are far stickier than the blue side. So if you get the chance to pick your side loading into this, if you are in the XP League or any sort of college league or anything like that, you do want to get this pink side ideally because it's really sticky spawns this side and it's hard to flip out towards blue. If pink spawn is blocked, you'll spawn yellow, and then if the yellow spawn is blocked, you're going to spawn teal. So it's pretty much here, here, then here as sort of the hierarchy. Now if blue is blocked, the enemy will flip. So if the blue is blocked, you'll spawn in one of the available spawns the other side of the map. So just be very careful that you don't really want to be flipping spawns from the blue side, so don't push up too much. But if you do have someone on your team who's a little bit aggressive and they do push through P1, it can risk your enemy teams, the enemy team spawning to either one of these locations. But obviously it depends where you are. Obviously if you're blocking yellow and your teammate then pushes up P1, they're going to spawn teal. Similarly, if yellow isn't blocked but pink is and teal is, and you have someone pushed out blue, they're going to spawn yellow, if that makes sense. If your team is in the block areas of pink, it will anchor spawns to the right-hand side. So even if enemies are pushing through P1 to this side, if you've got teammates also this side, it will anchor you to this side of the map. So you'll still spawn, even if enemies are sort of over this area here, you'll still spawn in one of these three. It will just mean that if the enemies are up towards the P2 side, you're going to spawn teal. Unless your team pushes through P1 and waits your anchoring spawn to the left-hand side of the map over here. If all spawns are blocked, which happens in rare occasions, you're going to spawn red. But obviously that happens very rarely. There's 4 spawn locations, and you'd have to block. It'd pretty much have a player in each of those for that to happen. But it has happened. It has happened in the VOD, so I thought it's worth noting just in case it happens to you. Now, to truly flip spawns, your team have to have so much weight towards the right-hand side of the map. Not blocking all these other spawns, and that's how you'd get the spawns to flip. So let's take a look at a couple of scenarios here. which can hopefully, if you remember these, you're pretty much going to be good to go. So if you spawn either pink or blue and your team have pretty much spawned here and this is your normal spawn, nothing to note, it's just your regular spawn. Now if you spawn yellow, it basically means the enemy is pushed through the pink hand side of P1 and out the blue side of P1, and as a result you've had to spawn here as the next available spawn. Now if you spawn teal, it means enemy is the blue side of P1, obviously blocking the blue spawn, and someone is blocking the yellow and pink spawn, which tends to mean that they're on the blue team rotating through to P2 already, and therefore you spawn teal. Now if you spawn red, as I say, it means every other spawn point is blocked, so it's just worth noting if that happens, the enemy are pretty much everywhere. Hold an iron, hold a pre-aim, they're probably going to run into it just because they're coming from every other angle. Note that if none of your team are anchoring the pink or yellow spawns, it risks a flip. Just remember that you don't want to get too over aggressive to into the blue hand side of the map here, because you will just flip. So let's go through some advice now on how you can approach this hill from either side. If spawning in as the blue team, you need to try and get around the pool side towards P2 as early as possible. This will start to spawn the enemy's teal, but not completely flip unless you have a full team wipe and obtain complete control of the right hand side of this map. So just because you manage to get hills towards P2 when you're like off with this P1, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to flip. Chances are they're going to flip to teal first, as I say, unless you get like 4 men down, in which case they probably will flip once you push through P2. Now if you spawn pink side, you really want to try and have a player watching pool side, left lane from teal, and remaining 2 of you'd have one here watching the pool, 1 here watching teal, and the remaining 2 sort of in P1 watching the mid cut, but not getting too over aggressive, because otherwise you risk flipping. You do want to stay this right hand side of P1 behind these headers, maybe anywhere like in this general vicinity, not over here, because it can cause a flip. So yeah, that's P1. By the way, this is the most complex hill out of all the hills on this, so it does get easier to remember, so just bear with me. So P2 is this little room here. Now the main spawns in P2 are obviously pink and blue. As we go through this, I've labelled pink as the better spawn than blue, so that's just something you can remember if it's easier. Pink is better due to the route into the hill is easier, because there's a vent you've got to go into here, or the tight corridor here, or you've got to flank all the way around if you're on the blue side, which is a bit not ideal. Plus you'll notice it's really close to P3, so saves, spawning here saves effort of rotating. Now if pink is blocked, you'll spawn yellow, and if blue is blocked, the alternative spawn to blue is also yellow, bizarrely. Now teal spawns open up if someone is blocking blue, pink and yellow, so you'll only spawn here if enemies are blue, pink and yellow, pretty much, which only really happens if someone's just come off the yellow spawn. Now this hill uses squad spawns fairly heavily, so if your team are blue side of P2, sort of in this general area where you can block blue from, your team will spawn with you unless there is an enemy there too. Now if your team are on the pink side of P2, you're likely to spawn pink side unless obviously there's an enemy there too. So let's take some scenarios similar to what we did on P1. Now if you spawn either pink or blue and your team are spawning here, there's nothing to note, it's just a regular spawn. It's just if you spawn with your team, you spawn with the team. There's no reason as to why that would happen other than the fact your team are there, so there's nothing too much to note. Now if you were spawning blue and start to spawn pink, it means the enemies are heavily pushed through P2 and are blocking the blue spawn. This does tell you that they are not in the pool, however, because otherwise you'd have spawned yellow. So yeah, if you were spawning blue and you spawn pink, it just basically means the enemy team have pretty much just rushed all the way through P2 and are blocking the blue spawn. Now if you were spawning pink and start to spawn blue, it means the enemy have pushed through P2 and have left the blue spawns completely open, so it tells you they've got pretty much a whole of blue pool control, but nothing this side of P2. Now if you were spawning either blue or pink and you spawn yellow, it means the enemy have pushed out your old spawn and are obtaining the pool side of P2 either way. So let's take this as an example. So let's say you were spawning blue and now you spawn yellow. That basically tells you that an enemy's pushed through P2, but they also have pool side, which is blocking pink, and as a result, the next available spawn is yellow. Now if you spawn teal, it means the enemy have probably just spawned yellow and also blocking pink and blue, and as a result, the game has to put you somewhere, so it spawns you teal. Now, if you spawn pink, I've got a couple of situations here which can help some approaches to P2 from either side, similar to what I did on P1 again. Now, if you spawn pink, you want to try and keep these spawns whilst getting P2 control because it's so close to P3. Ideally, push through blue spawns while someone sits back to block the yellow spawns. If they're here, they can sort of watch the mid cut through mid, so they can watch the mid pinch. So if they're sat around this area here, they can watch the mid cut. So, you know, but whilst they're doing it, they're blocking yellow spawns. And you can have also someone like poolside to watch the mid cut. This will basically spawn the enemy teal. So what you'd be doing there is you'd have someone poolside, which will be blocking the pink spawns. You'll have someone here blocking the yellow spawns, and you'll have someone on the hill, and then push through P2, blocking these blue spawns. That'll spawn the enemy teal, which is the furthest spawn point pretty much from P2, and the furthest spawn point definitely from P3. So that's a nice little approach you can have from the pink side. Now on the flip side, let's see if you have the bad spawns and you're spawning blue. It's not too difficult to spawn the enemies yellow. You literally just need to push slightly into the pool and perhaps have someone in the mid cut watching the vent push into P2. So if you have someone, you know, in pool, someone in this area watching the vent push into P2, it would then basically just spawn them yellow, and that's further away from P2, and that's probably the desired approach. You'd then aim to flip the enemies to spawn blue towards the end of the hill and obtain the pink or yellow spawns ready for P3. And you can do that by pretty much pushing out of P2 through pool or through mid. And as a result, you'll leave this blue spawn open. You get kills, they'll spawn at blue because you've just pushed this out without and leaving this open. So yeah, that's P2. So P3 is a fairly simple hill to remember. So obviously, again, the main spawns are pink and blue. Neither is really better on this. If I'm honest, it's very 50-50, but whoever rotates to P3 first has the advantage, as it's a really, really easy hill to hold. This is probably the biggest money hill on the game, on the map. Definitely not on the game. I've only pretty much said pink is better for the pure fact it's physically close to the hill, but either side is good for this. It doesn't really matter too much. It's completely personal choice for you and your team. Now, pink spawn is the default spawn. It's not like they're both main spawns. Pink spawn is the default spawn here. So whoever respawns first with this open will spawn here. I hope that makes sense. Whoever respawns first, either team will spawn here if this isn't blocked. If you remember P3 on Zarqwa Hydro is very similar to that. You need to block this actively if you don't want enemies to spawn there, because this is just the default spawn that anyone will spawn if it isn't blocked. So if pink's spawn is blocked, you'll then spawn blue, and then if blue and pink are blocked, the yellow spawn opens up, which is bizarrely middle of the map between both of them. So again, let's take some scenarios here. If you spawn pink, this just basically tells you the enemy aren't blocking it, nothing more. That's it. It tells you the enemy aren't blocking. Your team can be anywhere on the map. If you spawn pink, it basically just tells you the enemy aren't blocking it. If you spawn blue, it means the enemy is anchoring pink spawns or have just spawned there themselves, and either way, they're just blocking it. So they're blocking pink if you spawn blue. Now, if you spawn yellow, which can happen fairly frequently, actually, I see this a lot in my VODs, it means the enemy are anchoring pink or may have just spawned in pink and are pushed into pool, blocking the blue spawns as well. So just be very careful. If you spawn yellow, it basically means that you have enemies from this hand side here and pool. So you've got either way you run out, you're going to run into people. So just maybe hold a pre-aim, play a little bit slowly, and just check your corners as you run out from the yellow spawn because it's super mixy. So the best thing to do on this hill is to just get to the hill first, no matter what. Incredibly hard to break if you're the team playing against. It's really hard to break if you're playing against a team who really know what they're doing, if they really know the spawns. If you're playing against someone who's had this spawn guide and they've remembered it really quickly and they know what they're doing, they're going to be absolutely dominant for this hill. Now, if you want the enemy to spawn blue, you need a player blocking pink spawn, and from it you can be sort of here watching the mid flank. You'll be blocking pink, but you'll also be watching the flank in case anyone decides to run through P1 around here to P3. You'll come watch that whilst blocking the pink spawn. And then the others can literally just sit in P3 watching the stairs and the hop up. It's that easy. That's what I mean. There's no better side, but it's so easy to hold. You can literally have one person here watching the flank and blocking the pink spawn. You can then have someone sort of sat on this heady looking towards, you know, the pool, and then everyone else sort of just focusing on this blue spawn. If you're blocking pink, you can guarantee they're spawning blue. It's as simple as that, unless you get too aggressive and pushed and pool. But yeah, so that's what I would say. If that is your plan, if you do want to hold pink spawns, do not push far into pool because you'll spawn them pink, which means spawn them yellow, which means it leaves it a little bit, you know, they probably will push through here a little bit more, which means this player is probably going to get outnumbered if you do end up spawning them yellow, so just be careful. Alternatively, it's also very easy to spawn trap the enemies in pink. So if you decide this is the strat you want to do, you need to ensure that this spawn isn't blocked. So you can have a teammate pool watching the mid cut, and the rest of the team literally sat on the hill watching these two alleys. So you could have like 3 people on the hill or 3 people around the hill, maybe 2 people middle, but you need someone pool pretty much just to make sure that they can't really get through and flip the spawns. But realistically, as long as you're not blocking this pink spawn, they're just going to keep spawning there. So if you get hill control, leave the spawn open, they'll spawn behind you, and you can literally just focus your attention on this alley and this alley because they're not really going to come from anywhere else. The only thing they might do is wrap through middle like this, which is why I said have someone poolside watching this just in case they do feel like they can do that. So yeah, that might be the easiest thing for you. It's up to you to decide. Yeah, it's personal choice at the end of the day. So moving on to P4. So P4 finds itself here just near this monument and under the window that is very overpowered. The pink and blue spawns are obviously the main spawns. I've said pink is better simply due to the fact that the routes to the hill are easier and you have height over the hill from this window, easier to obtain from these pink spawns. And it's arguably closer to P5. Obviously the alternative spawns are teal and yellow for both, and obviously that's closer. So I think these spawns are probably a little bit better to have than the blue spawns on this hill. Now if the pink spawns are blocked, you'll spawn yellow, and if the blue spawns are blocked, the secondary spawn to that is teal. So again, let's take some scenarios here to hopefully make a little bit more sense to you guys. Now, as always, if you're spawning either pink or blue and your team were just spawning here, the only reason you spawn there is because of that. It's just your default spawn at that time. There's nothing to worry about if you spawn with your team. It's just standard stuff. Now, if you spawn yellow, it means the enemy have pushed through P4 or P1 and are blocking the pink spawn. And the enemy, whilst you're spawning yellow, it basically tells you the enemy is going to be spawning blue at this point. So they're probably a little bit closer to the hill than you would be, unless you also have someone pushed up through middle, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, if you spawn teal, it means the enemy has pushed through P1 whilst coming off of pink spawns. So be very careful of your mid cut when you push out this corridor. So if you spawn teal, basically means the enemy's middle of the map and they're coming from pink. So just be very careful when you're running out of here. If this is the route you decide to take, which I probably wouldn't advise because it's you're just trapped in an alley pretty much, just make sure you pick up this mid here, because chances are the reason you spawn here is because someone's pushed into middle here. So they might, you might find that they're pinching you from the side. So just be very careful that if you spawn teal, chances are there's someone P1. The best thing to do from the pink side, in my opinion, is to get into P1, because that does force the enemy to spawn teal. And it basically means that they just have to run down a corridor for the hill, and a lot of the times players just default to that. They'll spawn in at teal, they'll be facing this corridor way, and they'll just run forward. They won't think to take a route. So it means that it's very easy to read where they're going to be. It basically means that your team can align their attention to this corridor, but you need to make sure that you have someone anchoring the spawns, otherwise it risks a flip. So yeah, someone on hill, someone middle, someone just sat back a little bit more deep, just making sure that they can't flip. That's literally the best setup. But you'll find a lot of the enemy will just flood this one narrow corridor over and over again, because they probably don't know better at this point. It's a new map, they're still learning. Now, if you spawn blue, you really want to work your way through the middle of the map, because you don't want the enemy to be able to get to the middle of the map and spawn you teal, because it does leave you in a bit of a mixy situation. But realistically, you want to try and cause the enemy to flip, and the best way of doing that is to push through middle, block the pink spawn, and block the yellow spawn. So just get into this area here where you'll be blocking both. It will spawn the enemy out, and as a result, and then you can play for the hill just like that. It's extremely hard to get hill time from the blue spawn when the enemy knows you're spawning blue, because and you run directly to P4. Realistically, if the enemy's got top control and hill control, and you're spawning blue, and all you're doing is running straight front, they only need to watch one way. You really need to be unpredictable in this blue. If you spawn blue, you need to take a route around the middle to try and flip at most. At least maybe be a bit of a distraction. So yeah, that's how I would play P4. Moving on to P5, a bit of a controversial hill because it is in a pool. It's quite a big hill, and I was struggling to decide what side was better. So obviously you've got the pink and blue as the main spawns, and I've decided that pink's better. It might not be, obviously it's personal choice. Obviously I would say if it was definite, but personally I think pink is better because of how easy it is to spawn the enemies further out from the blue spawn. That's the main thing. Additional to that, you can see a lot of the hill from the right hand side of the map here, whereas on the left hand side you've got a little bit of cover from Tiki, which means it obscures the vision of the hill a little bit here. So it is a little bit of a toss up, but for those two reasons I think the pink spawn is a little bit better than the blue. Now if the pink spawn is blocked, you will spawn yellow. If the blue spawn is blocked, you will spawn teal. Now you need to ensure that no matter what side you spawn, you push through the hill to spawn the enemy further out. So even if you're comfy having blue spawns, make sure you push through P5 to spawn the enemy at yellow. On the other flip side of that, if you're spawning pink, you need to make sure you push through or you block blue spawns to spawn the enemy even further out at teal. It just makes your job a lot easier. The worrying thing is though, if you do this without anchoring spawns, you risk flipping the enemy to behind you. So you need to make sure someone on your team is dedicated anchoring the spawns so that they don't flip and get a surprise spawn behind you. So let's take a look at some scenarios. Now, as always, if you spawn at pink or blue and you're with your team and they've just spawned there, that's why you spawn there. There's nothing too much to note. It's just a regular spawn. Now, if you were spawning pink and then you spawn yellow, it means the enemy are anchoring blue spawns whilst pushing through P5 to block your pink spawns. On the flip side of that, if you are spawning blue and that you end up spawning teal, it means the enemy are anchoring pink spawns and therefore blocking pink spawns, whilst pushing through P5 and therefore blocking blue. Now, if you spawn, this is going to be sit tight for this bit. If you spawn at the opposite alternative spawn, for example, if you were pink but you somehow spawn teal, that means the enemy have completely left their spawn and are aggressively pushing your spawn out. So just be very careful that if you flip to the other side completely, the furthest possible hill to what you were in, it generally means that the enemy's just got really aggressive through P5, and as a result they're blocking both pink spawn and the alternative spawns. They've got to be really aggressive to do that, so just bear in mind that if you still have a player alive here on your team, communicate. There's people everywhere, in short. So let's go through how to best play P5 from both sides. So the best thing to do from the pink side is to sit on the pink side of the hill. So if you sit sort of here, you're blocking pink spawn, i.e. blocking it, but you're also getting the hill time. You can then have a teammate mid-cut, watching the mid flank just here, and then pushed up to the blue side of the pool. What that will do is maintain a pink anchor, because you have someone here, you have someone here, you have someone here. That's going to be anchoring the spawns to this side. But that one player pushed up to the blue steps here, or even here, watching this side here, as well as that will spawn them tier, which means they've got an even further route to get to P5. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're spawning blue, ideally you want to flip, but it's not essential if you don't have enough time to do it. If you don't do it immediately on P5, it's going to take far too much effort to flip, so you might as well just play off the current hill you're on, the current side of the map you're on, sorry. Realistically, if flipping doesn't work out, you need teammates balcony, blue side of P1, so sort of this area here, watching the mid flank, on time near Tiki, so like just generally this side here, and then pushed up towards the pink hand side of the pool. What that will do is it will ensure that this hand side of the map is anchored and the enemy won't spawn there, but pushing out of pool into this, the pink hand side of the pool will mean that the enemy spawn a little bit further out towards yellow, which means they've got a little bit of a longer route towards P5. Now, arguably, the best alternative spawn is probably blue because it's close to P1, but I don't think it's neither here nor there. But yeah, the essential thing on this hill is win your gunfights, get onto the hill, have someone push through, have someone block, and therefore you'll have a perfect mix of spawning the enemy further out without them having the surprise of, without the surprise of them spawning behind you because no one was anchoring. So yeah, that's 6-star hardpoint spawn guide. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, obviously you can comment down below, or as I say, you can get this documented in a Google Doc in my Discord, and in my Discord you can ask any questions. If you're not sure about a certain scenario or you want a little bit more clarification, we can have a little chat on Discord. That's absolutely fine. Just at me in one of my channels. Yeah, that'll do for now. Hope you enjoyed the video. Ciao for now.